Hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be working on my 2011 Mercedes E550. This is the newest and lowest mileage car we have with just over 60,000 miles. Even though it doesn't have a ton of miles, we need to replace the front struts. And that should be super easy, right? It's just an E-Class, which is a pretty common Mercedes. Well, as with all of my cars, no, it's going to be a whole thing. This E-Class is actually an uncommon spec. It's an E550, so it has the 5.5 liter naturally aspirated V8 engine. But it's also Airmatic, so it has the adaptive damping air suspension. And on top of that, it's also 4Matic, which is what Mercedes calls their all-wheel drive cars. So that means that the front air struts are almost impossible to find, even for Mercedes themselves. It turns out these front air struts are probably the hardest parts to get on this car if you want to keep the adaptive damping. And that's what firms up the ride in sport mode. If you don't care about that, you can go aftermarket and save some money, but if you want to keep all the functionality, you have to go to Mercedes. We looked everywhere to find an option that actually kept the adaptive damping rather than just using a resistor to fool the system, but we couldn't find an aftermarket option that was still in stock that offered that. Now, before you go and comment that you found adaptive Airmatic front struts for the W212 E-Class, remember that this is both Airmatic and 4Matic, which is a rare combination of options and requires special front air struts. This rarity meant that getting our hands on the parts was a bit of a nightmare. We couldn't find it at any parts supplier, so we needed to go to the dealership. The parts department at our local Mercedes dealer are great, and they had to do a bunch of footwork to try to get these parts. It turned out that only a few dealerships in the country had the part in stock, and those that did didn't want to give it up. The parts manager jumped through a bunch of hoops to try to get another dealership to let them buy the parts from them, but they had no luck. Eventually, he actually had to ask Mercedes corporate to get involved to get a hold of these parts. And it turns out corporate must have had a secret stash of inventory somewhere, because a few days later, the parts were on the way. Overall, it took a few weeks to go through this whole process, but we finally had the parts. But then there's the price. These things were expensive. The struts were $1,400 each. Yep, that's $2,800 for the set. Before the core charge refund, we paid about $3,200. It would certainly be cheaper if it were just a rear-wheel drive E550 with air suspension, and even cheaper if you went with aftermarket and lost the adaptive damping. But this car is really nice to drive with that. So anyway, let's get this suspension serviced. The reason we're servicing this suspension is that the driver's side front sinks noticeably when it's parked, and the ride is not quite as good as it once was. On the passenger side, it holds air well. Fortunately, the driver's side airs up as expected with the car running. So this is the air strut we're going to be replacing. Actually, as you can see, the bellows that protect the airbag are damaged. It's kind of dirty. You know, not awesome, but it's going to be replaced, so it'll be good. As you can see down here, we got the front axle, all the suspension components, and our strut. So this is the top of the air strut. It's got 3 mounting bolts, 2 and 3, and these are E12, like this. And then our air line that connects right here. We also have a protective cover here, and when you pull it off, you want to be careful because there is a plastic bracket which is separate from the cover. So pop that off and you put it aside. And here you can see the coil for the airline, and this here is a little bracket it holds into. So we'll deal with that in a little bit. And then down here we have the rest of the strut, and since this is the 4Matic Airmatic, it's a little different than the rear-wheel drive version since it has to accommodate the axle. So as you can see, there are 2 main mounting points right here, and these are On this side they're nuts, and they are 21 millimeter. And on the other side they are E-Torx E18s, like that. But it's also connected, besides these two right here, there's also an arm right here, a link, that connects right up in there. So this is 18 millimeters, and if you need a Torx bit for the center, it's T40. So if it spins, you can use a T40 to hold it so it doesn't just rotate. Now as you work on all this, there's a couple other things. This car has adaptive damping, so there's a connector right here that we'll have to disconnect, and there's a plastic bracket right here that holds the wiring. And this also holds the wiring for the wheel speed sensor, which comes right here. So we will be popping these out of little brackets like that, and we will be taking this apart to remove it from this strut, and we will be reassembling it onto the other strut, the new strut. We also have a brake line holder in the back here, so we'll keep an eye out on that when we remove this plastic piece. So yeah, the main mounting points are the link here, the two bolts with the nuts right here, and the three mounting points up at the top. Everything else is the air line up top, and then sensors, and cable guide. While I was breaking the bolts loose on the strut, something weird happened. As you can see, this is shock absorber fluid actively seeping out. It looks like this strut was on its way out, and a seal finally failed when I used my impact wrench. So before we do anything, the first step is to vent the pressure in the strut, and to do that you can use your diagnostic tool. In our case, we read the pressure in it and only had 5 psi, which is below the threshold of 43 that they say you have to be below before you crack this. So it's a 10 millimeter line wrench. There we go. So this is off. We have to pop this plastic bracket off too. Now right here there are two little clips, so I'm going to push from the top in here to release them. That way this will come off. There we go. So right here, these two little tabs, you can push them from the inside and it'll allow it to release off the lip. Alright, so our next step is to remove this right here. So it's an 18 on the back. I've already broken it free, and then a T40 on the inside. And the way I'm doing it here is I've got my ratcheting wrench set to tighten, and I'm turning this counterclockwise, to loosen it, because we're working on the nut. I'll slide that out the back. I will put the nut back on it just loosely so I don't lose it. Then we got this bracket here, and we're going to unclip both lines right here. They clip in the back as well. Yep. And the other one actually has a couple clips down here as well. Pop those out. Right here we got a rubber guy right there. And then on the back, same thing. There we go, these are free. Alright, then we're removing this line bracket. So there's a little pin clip right here. So this actually clips in through a metal bracket that's on the strut. There's a guide pin here and this retaining pin. So we're going to work on getting this pin off, and then we should be able to take this off. That's actually held on with a little plastic piece. Then we'll slide this out this way. Oops. And it just slides towards the front. Oh wait, we have our brake line. Oh, held in here too. Out of the way. If I can get this brake line out of there. There we go. Alright. Put that aside. That's our lines separated from the strut. So next we can remove the connector from the front axle damping valve unit. This is a little tab right there. There we go. So it is push to release. Move that out of the way as well. Next is remove the 2 bolts here. I did break this loose ahead of time. Yeah, this is 21 and this is E18. So once we have these out, this is going to tilt forward because of the way the suspension is designed. Once that's out, we have to take the 3 mounting bolts up at the top out. And when you get to the last one, don't take it out all the way. Just like
I'm going to put that one back in a little bit. Okay.
Try to get those out. Okay. This has to stay up here because the valve thing will catch on the brake line.
Do you...
Right, you can do the top.
Okay, you want me to do that? Okay.
Yeah, here. It's out. Yep.
Okay. How can I help? What do we need to do?
Well, this will come down, and then this can all come down a little.
Wait, can I just hold the brake line up? No, it's rigid. Okay. Okay, I'm holding it.
Let me see what I can do. Okay, that's loose here.
Can I pull this down more and give you more room? There we go.
Yep. I get that. Drop this down. I guess this is all bad. So.
Oops.
What? It's caught on the aligner a little bit.
That's fine. Can I push some now or help you?
Yeah.
What do you need me to do?
There we go. Ugh.
And the dust shield's fucked.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really dirty, so you're gonna want to wash your hands. So right here, this piece spins, and you're gonna have to align it so that it goes in here. The single point right here will go on this side, and you can actually match the shape here to this here, or the shape around here. I got this side. Try to slot that on. No.
I'm just adjust it. I'm gonna get these, and we can just go straight up.
Yep.
Okay. Up.
As it turns out, the opening in the wheel liner is a tight fit around the top of the strut, so we had to wiggle things a bit before it fit through.
There we go. Oh, up a little more. Try it. Wait. Oh, there we go. Okay. Just give it 2 seconds. You got it. That one's in. We do one more. Okay.
Yep, it's holding it.
I'm trying to adjust it a little bit down. There. It is.
Can you wiggle it a bit? Or maybe the top one's holding it, so it's just a matter of getting the bottom one in now. Maybe I can push the strut instead.
Push the strut which way?
To the back of it.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect, yeah. Come forward a bit. Push a tiny bit more. There we go. a little bit. Okay, we're in. And it's 33 Newton meters. Okay, so these get torqued to 120 Newton meters. And then there's the second step, which is to tighten it another 90 degrees. So you'll have to get a torque wrench that can do that. Okay. Do that one, then the bottom one too. Okay. Now, have my wrench set to 90 degrees. That's it. Okay. And same thing on the top one. Alright, that's all the main attachment points. So next is, we're going to put our connector back in here. We're going to put our bracket back in. This comes in from the front. Put this pin back in. That'll lock it in place. Again, right here we have the rubber thing. It goes into the slot right here. This line pops in there. And then up here, in here. This line, there and there. And up top on the back. So right here we have a couple of holders. This one goes there. This one goes in there. And our brake line, same thing. On this side here, you have to fish it in to that hook, move it over, and slot it in there. Yep, it's like that right here. That's all our lines attached. Okay, now it's time to put the link back. Just feed that, slot that right in. There we go. So if this doesn't line up quite right, you can work on pulling this up a bit so the angle becomes right. Get that started here. When it starts turning the center part, I'm going to have this set to loosen so that when I tighten that, it holds it in place. So this is 98 Newton meters. Go. So now, since we have the new brass fitting here, we have to take off this original brass fitting. And to do that, there's a little split right here you might be able to see. Right there. We're going to spread that apart. That'll allow us to release the line from this old brass fitting. Just a little bit. You can see now right here, this has come out. It's coming out. Good, twist it out. Slide it off. You see this a little. It's got a little open piece on the ring. So we spread it apart. That lets it come off the line, and that will allow this previous fitting to come off. And this is the brass fitting here. And now on this line here, there is a line, there's a little mark with how deep it went. Actually there's two marks, and that's how far we're going to slot this in. So just going to run this line in there, and that you can feel it locks it in already. So once it's in place, it shouldn't go further than it can. But as you can see, it's locked in, and that means we can snap this bracket back on both sides. These are torqued from earlier. so we can pop this back on. Yeah, this clips in here, so on the metal piece. There we go. Yeah, you can see where the indents are. That's where you can push in to make sure it grabs, and it's all lined up. And that is it. The last thing will be to put the wheel back on and torque it to spec. But right now we're going to use our Autel scan tool to see if we can raise the pressure in the shock and make sure it holds steady and we don't have any leaks. So this is the front passenger shock. We're doing the pair, that way, you know, they'll wear evenly over time. And we won't put extra stress on the other one if something happens to this one. So everything is the same. You know, I've already removed the bracket here, but there's one difference. This little connector that goes to the valve here also goes to the brake wear sensor. So you just have to keep that in mind. It splits here. Otherwise, exactly the same. It looks the same here. The link's off in the back. Same procedure. And the right side strut is out, and we're going to put it in the way we took it out, which was through here. So past the brake line, we'll go down a little bit. That'll give us room to maneuver, and then we'll work on clearing the wheel liner. We have it in. You can see it's compressed when you get it. Once you have it up, you tighten these up by hand just to hold it, and then we can start putting all this back into the right place, which is sliding this into here. And since we have the top bolts in, this is the next step. 96 foot-pounds. I like to put the chock on the right side so that when I torque it, it doesn't roll the car. And the same thing on the other side. Oh, that's it. That's the job. So the struts are done, and it wasn't really that bad of a job. The front left strut was clearly ready to give out at any moment, so it's great that we got that solved. Unfortunately, replacing them didn't quite solve all of our problems. We took it for a quick test drive, and the car rides better, it's holding air better, but it's still sinking. In fact, now the car seems a bit lopsided. So we checked the air suspension pressures with our scan tool, and we noticed that the front left was taking longer to get to the right pressure, and it was losing pressure once it got there. It turns out that we had more than one problem. We kind of suspected this might happen, which is why we also bought a new air suspension valve block. Thankfully, this part is shared across a ton of cars, and it was super easy to get a hold of, and it wasn't that expensive. So let's go get that installed. So I'm under the car at the back of the car to do the valve block, and this is on the driver's side in the US. Well, I guess driver's side in Germany too. And the block is right here behind the bumper. So, our bumper right here, exhaust tip there, and it's mounted on this plate. 2 Torx bits in each corner, 1 in each corner, and the lines are all here. So, to get a little bit better access, there we're actually going to remove this panel, and this is held in with 10mm little nuts. And so there's one right here, another one further up there, and we go down or forward, I guess. There's one in here, and then one right here. So we'll pull those off, and that'll give us a little bit better access here. Now I have all the nuts off, but it's actually held in with a clip here onto the heat shield as well, so we'll have to pull on that and let this slide down. I'm gonna double check there isn't anything else, but it looks like that is it. So I pop that down. I'm gonna use both hands and work on that. So here's our valve block. Got our compressor right here. This is the line from the compressor to the valve block. Get our lines. They're all labeled up here and color coded, so you can see each line has like, it's like red, blue, yellow, black, green, brown back there, based on, you know, what everything is. One of them goes to the reservoir tank, But yeah, all right. So these are T30 screws that look like this. And they screw into the block, and there's a washer. Okay, there's like a rubber seal on one side, a little washer on the other side. You can kind of see it right there, so don't lose that. And get the other one off. Well, yeah, I'll keep moving. Got it. Yep. So to pull on this tab to release it. Okay, so you just let it hang down, I guess. With the valve block removed, we can unscrew the brass airline fittings. Is the tank.
Yeah, because they all have a little bit of pressure in them.
Now these are off. Make sure you don't rub off the colors here so you know which one goes where. You'll see here, see there's a little gap at the top. Right there. We gotta spread that apart to pull that bottom piece down, and then we can remove the brass nut.
And for the love of God, do not cut your lines.
Yeah, don't cut your lines. You could just use a little screwdriver, pry that out, pry that apart, and then this piece will slide off once it's loose enough. And then one good thing as a reference, you can see where the brass fitting meets the collar, and that's about how far you're going to be pushing it into the new block. Because all the fittings are already on the new block, that will allow you to just push the lines into place, and then it'll just seal itself. So I'm pushing the lines in. I got them started here. Get that there, that in there. Well, they're all set in place. Now I just gotta snug them up. There we go. That's all in. You can see they're all nice and tight in there. We can put in our connector. I should just snap in. There you go. And click. But a good first step is to, put standard pressure just about in all the corners and the reservoir, and make sure we're not getting any leaks up here. So we've refilled everything. This is working. It's diverting air wherever it needs to go. And so it's time to put the shield back on. Yeah, so there's the clip here. I'll put it on at the end. If you run your car, be careful. It might be hot. There's the clip. There we go. Cool. And that's it. So the car is back on the quick checks because the front left kept losing air really fast. And when it turns out, as you can see here, I have a piece of the line to the front left from the valve block. It turns out the problem wasn't the strut or the valve block, though the strut did have a bad shock. The line here was cracked. It was just split. I'm going to put in a picture of the crack. And that means that it was just leaking out. So right here, I have that line off, and I'm going to be replacing the brass fitting once I take the bad piece out and reattaching it, and we should be good to go again. I've got the one that came out in a knurl that's in good shape. They're on the white plug type thing. I'm going to screw that on. The plug on the brass fitting holds the knurl in place while we screw it in. I got my line that's cut at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to try to slip that in. Yep. That seems snug. While testing the system pressure in the front right strut, we noticed it dropping again. To see where air was leaking, we sprayed the line with soapy water, and we saw some bubbles. So we readjusted the line and the fitting until it was nice and sealed. It turns out this was something really simple that we missed. Whenever you work on the valve block of one of these cars, before you crack into the lines or pull out the valve block, make sure you clean the area and spray the lines and block with lots of soapy water. Then if you wait a little bit, you can see if anything's bubbling. If we had done that, we would have seen the problem a lot earlier. So now that we're all done, the car isn't sinking overnight anymore and it rides like new. It wasn't that bad of a job, it was just pricey. I do want to call out that although we paid $1,400 a piece for the front struts from Mercedes, you could purchase the R-Knot front struts for the Airmatic 4Matic E550 for about $820 a piece. R-Knot is a huge manufacturer of quality aftermarket air suspension parts, and we actually have some of their air struts on another project that's coming to the channel soon. But in this case, we opted to go for the Mercedes struts because we really weren't sure how we would feel about losing the adaptive damping. While $1,600 for two struts is a lot cheaper than $2,800 for both, ultimately it's up to you what trade-offs you're willing to make and what you're willing to spend. Maybe one day in the future, we'll get our hands on a W212 with the R-Knots and we can do a comparison. Now, I'd like to say that we're done with this car, but recently we noticed that sometimes the starter bogs down when starting the car, and other times it cranks for a while before starting up. So we need to figure out what's going on there. We're also getting an auxiliary battery fault message on startup, so we'll be tackling both of those things in the next video. If you like this video, or if you got a good laugh at the crazy amount we just spent on just two air struts, leave a like. If you want to see what else we need to do to sort out this 60,000 mile E550, subscribe. And if you think that we're headed for financial ruin with all these aging European cars, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.